According to Forbes magazine, there are 2,838 known billionaires in the world, and 67% of them are self-made. No trust fund, no rich parents, they started from scratch. And that should flip a switch in your mind, because it means that being born rich isn't the only way to get rich, really rich. Today we're breaking down the 6 most common paths to becoming a self-made billionaire without getting anything handed to you. Some are risky, some are just plain common sense, but they all prove that you can create wealth if you're willing to do what it takes. Welcome to Alux, the place where future billionaires come to get inspired. Now, before we get into the most common paths to becoming a self-made billionaire, let's talk about the other side of the equation, inheriting that wealth. Because if 67% of billionaires are self-made, it means that 33% of them were born into their fortune. But the thing is, it's not so black and white. Some billionaires are literally born into billions, like the Walton family. They're some of the richest people in America today, not because they built Walmart themselves, but because they inherited the company's shares from their father. Then there are the kinds of billionaires who don't start with billions, but they do inherit enough money that for them, it's pretty much guaranteed to get there. With the right assets compounding over time, their money grows into more money almost on autopilot. And finally, there's the kind of billionaire who starts off with money but still has to put in the work to scale it. As Donald Trump, of all people, famously said, "My father gave me a small loan of $1 million. Yeah, small loan. People make fun of him for that line, but if you stop to think about it, turning $1 million into $1 billion means multiplying it by 1,000. That's still an extraordinary thing to do, and you do have to pay back a loan. The point is, even though not every billionaire is a clean-cut textbook definition of self-made, becoming one is a monumental achievement no matter where you start. And it's also worth noting that even inherited wealth doesn't come out of thin air. Somebody made that money, probably in one of the 6 ways we're going to talk about here today. Remember, my friend, nobody in the Walton family is considered a self-made billionaire today, but Sam Walton, their father, he did build Walmart from the ground up. And he actually did it by following the very first path we're about to explore, starting a high-growth business. Now, this is the classic route to becoming a self-made billionaire, the founder's path. If you want to know what it looks like in practice, study Howard Schultz. When he first got involved with Starbucks in the 1980s, you couldn't find a Starbucks around every corner like you can today. Back then, it was a small chain of coffee shops in Seattle that didn't even serve coffee. They only sold it in bags so you could make it yourself at home. But when Schultz joined Starbucks in 1982, he had a crazy idea that it could become a household name around the world. And in 1987, he took the risk to make it happen by acquiring the company. But building Starbucks into what it is today took decades. Decades of raising capital, expanding internationally, and reinvesting into growth. By the mid-1950s, Starbucks went public on the stock market. Schultz owned a meaningful stake in the company, and so as the stock price soared over the years, so did his net worth until eventually it compounded into billions. The first path is the most common way to become a billionaire, but it doesn't happen overnight. But don't think of this as a bad thing, okay? $1 billion is a lot of money, so honestly, that's kind of expected. The key lesson for you here, Aluxer, is that the reason founders absolutely dominate the billionaire lists is that they can see potential where others don't and invest decades before the real payoff arrives. Starting a high-growth business is hard. Most people fail. But if you go all the way, the upside is unlike anything else. That's why the majority of self-made billionaires follow this exact path. Now, growing a company yourself is one way to become a billionaire, but you don't always have to do the work yourself. Sometimes, all it takes is owning a piece of the right company. And that's why the second path to becoming a self-made billionaire is by owning a business. Not as a passive investor, but as someone with a meaningful stake in a business that scales. Take Steve Jobs. Most people assume he became a billionaire because of Apple, but that's actually not true. In 1986, Jobs actually bought Pixar from the guy who created Star Wars for just $10 million. Now, of course, he wasn't a director, and he wasn't the one writing Toy Story or animating Finding Nemo. At Pixar, Jobs was essentially a high-level ideas guy, someone with vision, connections, and the ability to lead people. Pixar went public on the stock market in 1995, riding off the success of Toy Story. And since Jobs owned about 80% of the company, his stake grew to over $1 billion pretty much overnight. When Disney later acquired Pixar in 2006, Jobs got a payout of almost $4 billion, which, funnily enough, actually ended up turning him into the largest shareholder of Disney. So that is the power of ownership. It creates leverage. Jobs didn't do the day-to-day creative work, but by being the owner of Pixar, he captured the upside of everything the company built. Now, obviously, this path can be incredibly risky because if you own a bad company, it usually means bad news. But if you've got the vision to identify billion-dollar opportunities, the guts to place a damn risky bet, and the discipline to let talented people do what they do best, you can make it to the top no matter where you start. And if you want to start building the exact skills that help you spot and seize those opportunities, that is where the Alux app comes in. Have you ever wanted one place where you can find everything you need to build your best life? Well, inside our app, you'll find practical training on entrepreneurship, wealth building, negotiation, communication, and personal finance. You'll also find lessons on the things that keep you sharp, like your mindset, discipline, fitness, and motivation. But what makes the Alux app so powerful is it isn't just theory, okay? I mean, we've gone out and brought in world-class experts, people who normally charge thousands for their time, and they're sharing their knowledge in step-by-step lessons you can apply immediately in your business, your career, or your personal life. If you're serious about building a future on your own terms, this is the best place to begin, my friend. To sweeten the deal, just download the app and scan the QR code on screen to get 25% off your yearly plan on us. So go ahead and take that leap, okay? Because investing in yourself is the best decision you will ever make. All right, my friend, now let's get back to the video, shall we? So, the third path isn't just a way to become a billionaire, it's the path to becoming the richest person alive, and it always has been. If you look through history, the greatest fortunes have almost always come from people at the forefront of new technology. During the Industrial Revolution, it was steel, oil, and railroads. Andrew Carnegie, John D. Rockefeller, and Cornelius Vanderbilt were the wealthiest men of their era because they controlled the technologies that reshaped the world. During the computer revolution, it was Bill Gates and Larry Ellison. Fast forward to today, and nothing has changed, okay? The biggest fortunes of our time come from technology, too. Look at Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, and Elon Musk. I mean, they're probably the richest people in history because they're pushing the boundaries of electric cars, autonomous driving, space travel, and now artificial intelligence. The point is simple. Starting and owning traditional businesses can get you rich. But if you want to build the largest fortune possible, you do it by riding the wave of new industries before they become mainstream. This path is the most rewarding, but it's also the hardest one out of them all, because you have to create value out of something that 99.99% of people probably don't understand. But take a look around, and that's what the wealthiest people in history have always done. They see what's coming next, whether it's AI, renewable energy, biotech, or space, and they build companies that scale globally around those technologies. If you manage to win one of these races, your name is going to be written in the history books, my friend, and your wallet will thank you. Now, the fourth path to billionaire status is fame. But there really are two routes here, okay? One is the ultra-rare megastar path. People like Taylor Swift, who became so culturally dominant that her tours, masters, and licensing deals made her a billionaire all by themselves. But honestly, Taylor's kind of like the exception. The more common route is to leverage your fame because you have influence and a loyal audience. You can transform that into products, businesses, and investments that scale far beyond your original talent. Just look at these examples, okay? Michael Jordan's real wealth comes from his partnership with Nike and Air Jordan's brand, which still sells billions of dollars every year. Rihanna became a billionaire because she used her global recognition to launch Fenty Beauty. Kanye West, for all of his controversies, built Yeezy, one of the most influential fashion brands of the decade, and it pushed his net worth into the billions. And the list goes on, okay? Cristiano Ronaldo, Oprah, Dr. Dre, Kim Kardashian, Roger Federer, LeBron James. All of them celebrities who didn't get rich for the reasons they got famous. And that's the real takeaway here. Fame can make you rich, but leveraging that fame can make you wealthy. A billionaire if you do it right. All right, moving on now. The fifth path to billionaire status is slower, quieter, and in many ways more difficult for people to follow than starting or even owning a company. The next common way to become a self-made billionaire is through investing. Now, this path is all about patience. No one embodies this better than Warren Buffett. Back in the 1950s, Buffett started with just over $100,000 in savings, money he'd earned and invested since he was a teenager. And his strategy was remarkably simple. He bought good companies that he thought were undervalued. He held on to them for decades, and he let that power of compounding just do its thing. Yeah, that's a bit of an oversimplification, sure, but it's basically how Buffett grew Berkshire Hathaway into one of the most successful investment vehicles in history. Literally, okay, if you bought $1,000 of Berkshire stock back in 1965, that would be worth more than $30 million today. That is the exponential power of compounding. But let's be clear about this, okay? Very few people reach Buffett's level by simply buying and holding stocks. He's the exception, not the rule, and he didn't even cross the billionaire mark until he was in his 50s. But at the same time, investing is also one of the most common traits among billionaires, self-made and otherwise, because once they build wealth through other means, investing is what keeps their fortunes growing. So don't think about these paths as being isolated boxes that you have to choose between. In reality, most billionaires blend them. They might build or own a company, but they also put their money to work. So, investing isn't always how you start the journey, but it's almost always how you sustain it. Now, of course, investing doesn't only mean buying stocks and waiting decades for compounding to work. The next way that people become self-made billionaires is through diversified investments, which means you're spreading your capital across real estate, private equity, debt instruments, operating businesses, and even experimental ventures, each with the potential to skyrocket in value. A fascinating example of this is a billionaire named Kenneth Brian Dart. Now, he's the kind of billionaire who's famous for keeping a low profile, but behind the scenes, he's quietly constructed one of the most diversified fortunes in the world. Dart has developed entire towns in the Cayman Islands, invested in sovereign debt and mortgage-backed securities, taken major stakes in tobacco giants, even poured hundreds of millions into neuroscience research. His wealth isn't tied to a single bet. It's the sum of dozens of carefully chosen plays across industries, asset classes, and continents, each one building on his wealth. Now, most billionaires eventually adopt this approach because it makes it so that no single downturn can wipe them out, while also giving them exposure to upside across multiple domains. One success funds the next, and before long, you've built a portfolio so robust, it keeps growing almost on autopilot. That's the greatest thing about diversification. Given enough time and the right moves, it's both catapult and a safety net. So, those are the 6 most common ways to become a billionaire self-made. At the end of the day, every billionaire's story looks different on the surface, but the common thread is resilience, persistence, and strategy. You don't need to follow every path we've talked about, but you can learn from them and use those lessons to build your own version of success. Alrighty, Luxer, I hope this video gave you some clarity and inspiration, and if it did, make sure to like, subscribe, and check out our other videos for more insights. And if you're serious about building the skills that can take you to billionaire status, get the Alux app. Hundreds of thousands of ambitious people use it every single day, and we know it will be great for you too. Just download the app, scan that QR code on screen, and you'll get 25% off your yearly plan. We'll see you back here next time, Aluxer. Until then, take care.